Good morning and welcome to MS There is Hope. This is our bi weekly interview with Dr. Tressa Pinkleton in Seattle, Washington. Good morning, Dr. Pinkleton.
Morning, John.
We are going to be discussing today calcium, and it is probably the number one concern of people and told to them by their neurologist or their doctor that calcium from the vitamin D will be detrimental to them in some way. Um, I don't think that's true with us, but it can be. That's why we drink the water to flush our kidneys and, to remove the calcium. But we're going to discuss all that. I'm going to read a short disclaimer here, and then we're going to get Dr. Pinkleton's advice on what we should be doing about calcium. This interview is from our own personal experiences. We are not talking in specifics, but in general about our experiences while doing the Coimbra protocol. We are not giving medical advice or addressing any individual cases. Cases and results can vary using one method or one protocol or another. Methods and protocols should be done by a licensed medical professional. Dr. Pinkleton, inform us today on calcium, if you would, and thank you again for being with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's always a pleasure to have these chats with you, John. So, the last time we had a discussion, we were talking about vitamin K and how important, vitamin K is to have in our diet in general and how it relates to vitamin D and calcium. And so one thing I really wanted to touch base on is just this whole calcium consideration with the protocol. So as we all should know, at least, high dose vitamin D runs the risk of what is typically referred to as vitamin D toxicity, but really what that is actually meaning is hypercalcemia, or too much calcium in the bloodstream. And what that can do is really wreak havoc on the kidneys as they are trying to filter that calcium out, and can cause some kidney stress or kidney damage. As well as a few other issues that we don't need to get into right now. And so for that reason, with the protocol, protocol doctors have their patients follow a low calcium diet. Now, why I wanted to come on here and talk about this is that I have found that the people, especially the ones that aren't working with a protocol doctor, but a lot of people on the various social media sites, they kind of take the guidelines and just run wild with it. And what I have seen is that this actually pushes more people into a no calcium diet, which has been causing some issues for many people that are trying to follow the Coimbra protocol. So the low calcium diet that Dr. Coimbra prescribes and trained me to prescribe is very simple. It is no dairy, no nuts, no foods with a ton of seeds, no fish that you eat the bones of, like sardines. And I know a lot of, at least people in the United States, don't eat those things. I eat them all the time personally. And then also no foods fortified with calcium. So that means processed food where the company added calcium in purposefully to help bring up that nutritional amount. That's the low calcium diet. There's a little bit of nuance. Dr. Coimbra will also counsel his patients into just healthy lifestyle guidelines. And so he'll recommend not to have a ton of red meat and a couple of other things like that. But that doesn't mean that, I have patients come to me, can we have meat? I'm like, yeah, of course you can. And one must also realize that when we look at these dietary guidelines, to look at it through the lens of a standard Brazilian diet, and they eat a little differently than we do in the United States or in other parts of the world. And so, in the way I interpret him saying, don't eat a lot of red meat. Well, when I went to Brazil, I was there for 2 weeks, they eat a lot of red meat, like almost every meal has red meat. And so just like there's a little bit of translation that needs to go on. Anyway, so those 5, I tell my patients, those 5 food groups, that's what I want you to remove. I see things on the various social media groups of like, if it says 4% calcium or 2% calcium or 6% calcium, people have kind of come up with these arbitrary percentages that they can't, exceed in their diet. And that's just not the case at all. And also what it has done, it has led people, like I said, to eat far less calcium than they actually need. Now, why is this important? Because, one might think, well, that's great. Then there's really no chance of me having hypercalcemia. And kind of yes, but a little bit no. What happens when we are not consuming enough calcium for our bodies is that our body will be triggered actually to bring up that PTH signal, which is what we follow with the protocol to see if our vitamin D level or our vitamin D supplementation is quote unquote enough. And then when PTH increases, it will then signal our bones to release calcium stores into the bloodstream. And what that will do in the laboratory values is drive up those calcium levels. And so it will look a little bit like the person is heading into hypercalcemia. And it will also be a little confusing because PTH will have been stable for a while and all of a sudden it starts to increase and you're like, what's going on here? And then, the bones start to release their mineral stores, leading to osteoporosis, right? What a lot of people will then do is push their calcium down even further, which just exacerbates this whole issue and is one of the reasons why we can see some osteopenia and osteoporosis in this protocol, especially since a lot of people don't do the exercise requirements, which is a whole nother discussion we should have.
Discussion.
Yeah. So I had a consult with one of my clients who, we got on this topic, and he actually alerted me to how the German doctors had realized that this, was going on and have helped their patients self-correct. And so I reached out to a few of those providers and had some discussion with them. And I have in my practice started doing that as well, having my patients actually track their calcium amounts. And what I have found has been astounding. I have found people having, less than 200 milligrams of calcium per day, which is very, very low. And I have helped them raise their calcium intake, dietary calcium intake, up to a more typical range that's still a little on the low side, but nowhere near where it was. And what I have found is all of a sudden their PTH starts to drop back down again, and their urinary calcium is no longer high, and their serum and ionized calcium in the blood is no longer borderline high or just above that high end of range. And they start to feel better. And they're
you said something there that I want to address. You said urinary calcium. Number one by far concern of people, because they'll take their urine in, they'll take 3,200 milliliters, and they'll get a number back like 483, and they'll freak out because they think their calcium is 483. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So the kidneys, I'll try to. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but the kidney.
Right, here's the thing. Yeah. I think Dr. Coimbra put out, or somebody put out, it's 1,000 milliliters. You take the number of milliliters turned in. So if you turn in 3,200, let's say 3.2, you divide 483 by 3.2. That is your calcium number. That's what I've been told.
No, I see where you're getting at. So, in general, I've had a direct conversation with Dr. Coimbra about this on WhatsApp a couple of years ago. And what he told me was, ideally, we want calcium, total urinary calcium for the full 24 hours to be under 250 or 300. But, at least we want it no more than 250 per liter of urine voided. So, and I'm a little more conservative than that, because sometimes I will have people, void 3 liters of urine. And if their calcium is 750, that's a problem. If their calcium is 600, that's a problem. And in my opinion, if their calcium is even 500, that's a problem. But there's some nuance. And so that's why it's really, really, really important for people to work with a protocol doctor, because they don't have the medical training to understand the nuance. So the way that what I have found is that when I have my patients increase their dietary calcium, and I have them do this by typically I'm having them eat more dark leafy greens because of that vitamin K component. It's really, really important. All of the other minerals that help bring down inflammation, which help to also quiet down autoimmune symptoms. Sometimes I will say, why don't you have some more seeds, or maybe a little bit of nuts back in your diet? You've been missing those. There are things that we can add in if needed. Anyways, and then once they get their dietary calcium levels back up to a more normal range, all of those laboratory values start to settle back out. And then I will also start to see the osteopenia or the osteoporosis at least not get any worse, and oftentimes start to reverse. Again, the exercise has to be in there as well. I'm not going to give over this video the milligrams that people should aim for, because it really, in my opinion, depends on the activity level, the sex of the person, and the age of the person. And I do not want people to take a number that I say and run with it and end up harming themselves. But if the person has a protocol doctor, they need to reach out to that doctor and ask. The app that I have people use these days is Chronometer, Chronometer. It is a free nutrition tracking app. MyFitnessPal also works. And I tell them, don't listen to the whole, these apps are designed for like weight loss stuff. Don't listen to the calorie thing. Don't look at your macros. Just use this to track your actual calcium intake in milligrams. Because I'll have people say, well, it says I'm getting 20% a day. I don't know what that means. What's your milligram amount? And then follow that. And the tracking only has to be done for a couple of days to get a sense of what one is taking in. And then once I have them adjust and we see the labs, level back out, I'll say, once a week or twice a week, just track, make sure you're staying at that calcium intake level so that you don't dip back into where you were before. So it's really important that one works with a protocol doctor for this reason. And to be quite frank, the whole social media, all of these arbitrary rules that are set it's one of the reasons I'm not on those group pages as much, or hardly ever these days, is because it really stresses me out to see people suggesting things that could harm, and then not really listening to the advice of a protocol doctor.
I'll interject that I do not ever tell people how much vitamin D I'm on, because if you're not on the protocol and you're taking the amount of vitamin D that I'm taking, it's dangerous.
It's very, very dangerous. Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that think they're doctors, and you need to get over that and realize you're not a doctor. Yeah, you know your body better than anybody else. We know, but there are so many people out there that want to take charge of their health and want to be their own doctor. And, doctors are bad, and they need to get over that.
Well, I think that those types of feelings come from a place of being not listened to or completely dismissed. And I can understand the frustration. I'm a naturopathic physician, and I came to this field partly because the conventional medical model didn't work for me, and I was really upset by it. So I understand where people are coming from when they try to take the bull by the horns and just do the protocol themselves. And there's also a financial component to that as well, which I do understand. It's one of the reasons that I try to keep my rates on the lower end, because I want people to be able to access the protocol and have it not completely bankrupt them. But that being said, this isn't like, vitamin D can really cause, it's a hormone. It can cause some harm if it's not managed properly. And even conventional medical doctors, or, you know, functional MDs that don't have the training I have and other protocol doctors have, can cause harm if they try to do something like this without really understanding all the nuance. And so, you know, I can't stress enough how important it is to work with somebody that really does have that training and continues to learn as Dr. Coimbra updates his protocol, because otherwise things like this happen. And then we have to do a bunch of self-correcting, right?
You know, it kind of blew my mind this week that people were on the natural page for MS. So they're doing all this natural stuff. But then I would bring up vitamin D and they'd say, well, my doctor told me. And then they fall back on their doctor. And I wanted to say, hold it, time out. Weren't we just talking about natural means and natural ways? Your doctor knows nothing about this. You know, I think it was Terry Walls that said in her training when she was a doctor, she got like 20 minutes of eating right and, you know, that kind of training. The rest was all, you know, medical. I don't know how you would say that, but it was not natural. It was not how you should eat and how you should take care of your body.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little better now. I think conventional MDs now get a class, like one full, you know, class. Like, I don't know how long their classes are, probably anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, I would say. As a naturopathic physician, I think it was 2, might have been 3 nutrition like courses that lasted the whole quarter. And so we dive down a lot. There's someone I want to introduce everybody to. Hey, come in. You were being recorded.
Oh,
Hi. Hi. This is Joan Otwell. And we do a bi-weekly YouTube discussion about the Coimbra protocol. So everybody watching, this is my resident, Dr. Enrica Rouse, and you're going to be seeing her on some of our appointments perhaps, and then over time she'll be helping out with some of the follow-up lab reviews. So I just wanted to let everyone know.
I'll have to interview her sometime.
At some point, yeah. We're going
Right.
to finish up in just a second.
Yeah.
If you want to pop
Sure.
back in. Yeah, thanks. Sorry to ambush you.
Oh, great. I love it.
She's awesome, everybody. Anyway, so that's my whole thing about calcium. And if any of my patients or my clients are watching and they want to, you know, track their calcium on chronometer for a few days and then pop me a charm message and say, here's where my calcium was at, what should I do? I will keep an eye out for those messages.
Now, Dr. Tressa, I have to ask you this because I went out, it would just be easier this way. I went out this week and contacted hundreds of people. They asked me a lot of questions. I'm wondering if you would mind telling them, if I want to do the Coimbra protocol, how do I approach you to do that?
Yeah. So if they want to do the Coimbra protocol, if they already know 100% they want to do it, they can call my clinic and they want to work with me. They can call my clinic and just get on my schedule. If they have a couple of questions, general questions about the protocol or general questions about who I am, they can call and pop on my schedule for a complimentary 15-minute consult. And we can, you know, I can answer whatever few questions they have, and then they can be put on my schedule if they're ready. That's the best way to get on my schedule. I'm not sure about the other protocol doctors in the country.
You said something there a while ago. I want to address the cost of the protocol. I thought it was relatively cost I don't know the
Efficient,
word.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cost efficient. Thank you very much. You know, you forget words. But can you address that and what your costs are, or do you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, so my rates are up on my website, drpinkleton.com. And so people can go and look there and get an idea. I do believe I'm pretty affordable. I haven't compared rates to other doctors, but
yeah.
And then and those are for my out-of-state client rates where I work as a health consultant. I have patients that I actually like prescribe and help diagnose here in Washington State, and we just use their insurance.
So you do Zoom with people and do address medical issues that way?
Yes, I can do telehealth and teleconsulting. John, I have to actually run because Comcast's about to reset my router. I just got a notification from my office manager.
We'll get off here. Next time we're going to talk about exercise and look forward to that. And so if you got any questions on exercise, pop them on the Facebook page or email me the question on my YouTube channel and we'll try to address this. All right. Absolutely. Dr. Pinkleton, thank you so much. It was a joy talking to you.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks, John.
All right. Bye-bye.